Welcome back to another DPS analytic video. This is going to be the first week for Blackwing Lair. It's been an entire 7 days as of the recording of this video, so by now most players have gotten 2 resets in for Blackwing Lair. I didn't see a reason to make a video on the first initial reset since a lot of players didn't have their world buffs, most players were wiping and figuring out the mechanics, so it didn't really gauge how well certain classes are performing. With that being said, let's jump right into the video. Looking at all percentiles first, we have a pretty stagnant graph for the median DPS. Pretty much everyone is neck and neck in terms of the marginal differences. The Enhanced Shaman is the only thing where it steps down a bit, and then the big jump is between the Ele Shaman, the Ret Paladin, the Combat Rogue, the Frost Mage, the Subtlety Rogue, Demo Lock, Arcane Mage, Arms, and then finally the BM Hunter. Now the issue with this is there's very few logs for a lot of those specs at the very bottom. It's really not fair to justify how awful these specs really are performing, but if I had to take a guess, they are going to pretty much consistently be toward the bottom of this graph. I can see Frost Mage going up over the weeks, I can see Combat going up over the weeks, and I can see Ret going up over the weeks. Now, the Ele Shaman, I would imagine, would trend downward. As they get geared, they do scale, but they don't scale nearly as hard. So let's go ahead and look at some of the 95 percentiles. Most of your classes are pretty close within each other, honestly, and even the Ret being all the way down here, that's really not too much of a DPS difference. Now, I can't say the same thing for the Ele Shaman. They haven't really gotten any significant buffs or anything to help their kit out. They're going to continue to trend on the bottom half of the DPS. The Frost Mage I can see going up over the weeks, but that's pretty much it. Let's go ahead and look at the max percentile real quick, and it changes up a little bit. You have your Ret Paladin go up a ton of spots, your Feral Druid, Fury Warrior, and then the Survival Hunter are neck and neck. Enhance is doing incredibly well. Everything else is pretty close within each other. The only outliers is really the Feral Druid and the Fury Warrior. Outside of that, the next jump down is to the Destruction Lock, and then even then, all these guys are very close within each other. Last phase, the Balance Druid was nowhere near this level of DPS, so I'm happy to see that, even if we're looking at the max percentile. And then, of course, we just really need more data to work with these classes. I know the Ele Shaman will likely trend downward, but I can expect the Frost Mage to go up in the weeks to come. And then finally, let's look over each of these fights specifically. Let's start off with Razor Gore. I think over time, a lot of your bursty classes that benefit over short fights will start to pop off here. I'm going to place my bets now, and I'm going to say that the Ret Paladin will without a doubt be in the top 5 DPS in the weeks to come. Give them a little bit of gear, and I guarantee you they are going to start to scale and really pop off on this short encounter. And same thing for the Assassination Rogue. We've seen it time and time again on fights like Shaz and Molten Core. They start to just destroy the meters because of how short that fight is, being able to optimize all of their CDs. They're just the best at those short, bursty fights. And then, of course, they're even beating the Fury Warrior and Feral Druid in some of those scenarios. Moving on to Veil. This is likely going to be the trend going forward. The Fire Mage and up are all going to keep doing well. If they don't normalize the way Burning Adrenaline works on the logs, I don't think that this is going to change very much. And even if they do normalize the damage, I still think that these 5 classes will have a bit of a gap just because they benefit so much from Essence of the Red. For Broodlord, it looks like most of the classes are very neck and neck on this fight. I would assume that's mainly due to the teleport. Your dot classes like your Affliction Lock, your Shadow Priest, and your Destruction Lock, all of these can dot up the boss as it's teleporting. Over time, I would assume they get replaced by maybe the Fire Mage, the Fury Warrior, and the Hunters. If people just start to pull the boss back and optimally fight it where it teleports, I think that this is going to change a little bit. Moving on to Fire Maw, this is really just a melee-heavy fight. I could see in weeks to come that your Fire Mage goes up a couple spots, but it's really just the same trend of your Fury Warrior, your Feral Druid, and then the Melee Hunter, and even the Enhanced Shaman just competing for that top spot. In the weeks to come, though, watch out for that Ret Paladin, man. I'm telling you, this guy is going to start popping off. Just wait. And then let's address the big elephant in the room, the Ebon Rock and Flame Gore fight. This is the main reason you're seeing this big gap in DPS on the logs at the moment. The Fury Warrior can just permanently cleave the entire fight. The Combat Rogue and Assassination Rogue can obviously pop Blade Flurry, but of course that has a cooldown, and once it expires, they start to lose that DPS over the Warrior, since they can just permanently spam cleave. I don't think this is going to change in the weeks to come. Maybe the Enhance will get closer to this Combat Rogue, and the Combat Rogue will close this gap a little bit more to the Fury Warrior, but I think the Fury Warrior will remain on top for the rest of this phase. For Chromag, it's mainly going to come down to what spell vulnerabilities you're going to get. I think that the mages are going to be pretty unmatched here, mainly due to the fact of Frost Firebolt and Balefire Bolt covering multiple spell vulnerabilities. Not to mention, a really good Ignite with a fire vulnerability is just a pretty unbeatable combination. In the weeks to come, I can see the Balanced Druid and Enhanced Shaman passing up the Fiddle Druid. I dug through the logs and I can't really find a reason why they're doing so well. They're just an incredibly strong spec at the moment. They're not really benefiting from these spell vulnerabilities, so you would assume that over time they will trend downwards on this fight, but all these other classes will continue to rise up and go further and further. I don't think they're ever going to overtake the spots where the mages are though. And then finally, Nefarian. I would assume it really just comes down to the dice roll of what class call you get. Maybe in the future they'll exclude the add damage from the log, or limiting how much of that add damage will count towards the parse. We'll have to wait and see what happens. I don't think they'll change it too dramatically since it's kind of the strategy for the fight. It's not like the heat level 3 stuff we saw with Lucifron and Gehennis to where single target was the meta, and if you were cleaving, you were kind of just padding your numbers, so it didn't really seem very ethical. We'll just have to wait to see in the weeks to come. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like and subscribe for more videos just like this. Comment down below what you'd like to see next, and as always, I will see you in the next one.